Good morning. Hey, Lori, can you send me a text or a message through this to let me know if the sound is on, if you can hear me good? Okay, perfect. So we're going to get started here. This one is on finding ways to relieve anxiety in our life. Now, one of the more cheesier things that people say about this is that we're human beings, not human thinkings. And for all of human history, humanity was characterized by our ability to act and our ability to do things. And yet, somewhere along the line, application of items, actually doing things, ended up going into it just not being as important. So, you think of an average person's work maybe 600 years ago. What did they do? Well, somebody would be a farmer. They would get up and they would go split some wood out in the yard. Then they would hoe. They would plant seeds. They would work. Everything was related to action. And it didn't matter if you were a blacksmith. It didn't matter if you were a farmer, a carpenter. Everything included action. For thousands of years, humans spent their entire day doing things. And then over the last 100 years, things changed so that our physical strength, our physical action hasn't been as important. And what's been more important is our brains. While society's changed, our physiology hasn't. As humans, we still feel best when we move. And if we're thinking too long, if we're problem solving too long, we're in meetings too long. Welcome, Christos. Good to have you, buddy. So if we're doing too much thinking, too many meetings, too much reading, what ends up happening is our body starts to feel very anxious. And it says, you know what? This human hasn't moved in a long time. And so it starts to make us feel a little bit more anxious. It starts to build anxiety to start to move us toward getting out and getting something done. Now, if we sit too long, now for most people, their rhythms on this are about 30 minutes to an hour. If you sit for more than 30 minutes to an hour, your body starts to create not only anxiety, but it shuts off your capacity to think. And the reasoning being biologically, well, if I make this person anxious and I make them stupid, they'll have to get up and do something and then we'll all feel better. And while biologically we all kind of know that happens, it isn't part of most regular work systems. So if you work in EMS or a hospital, there's no thought to, okay, this person's thought too much, they've had too much anxiety, they need to get out and move physically and get something done. So what do you personally do to get around this? Well, because all of our lives are completely different, all of our schedules are completely different, what you need to be able to do is look at your own life, start on a day like today and say, okay, what do I got on my schedule? What do I have to do? What are my shifts like? And try and design some ways that you can move. Now, what can this be? Well, it could be that in between meetings, you take the stairs and then you up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs, down the stairs, do a few flights. It could be that in between calls, instead of trying to catch a cat nap, you do a few laps around the ambulance. All of the old school stuff from the 1930s, 50s gym classes, jumping jacks, push-ups. If you're feeling really sporty, pull out a few burpees. But at regular intervals throughout the day, you should be trying to go no more than 30 minutes without doing something for even 2 to 5 minutes. It just gets your heart rate going. Now, unless you're a fairly athletic person, you can't do more than 2 minutes of burpees or more than 3-4 minutes of hardcore jumping jacks, and that's all you got. So throughout the day, try and find some way to just dig in, kick butt, get some exercise going, and all you have to do is do enough that your heart rate gets out of its normal range, and you'll feel all of that anxiety start to leave. Now, in order for you to be able to do that, one of the things that's important is you have to have enough energy to actually have that exercise. So if you didn't sleep and you didn't eat breakfast, and you've now been in meetings or running from one thing to the next, and it's noon, you're going to be bonking. Your system isn't going to have energy. You're going to be tired, and you're going to feel like you don't have enough energy to even get up and exercise. So part of being able to exercise at regular intervals in the day to be able to relieve anxiety is to save yourself a little bit of energy for that. Plan it into your day. Plan, okay, if I'm going to be running the stairs for 5 minutes, then I'm going to need a granola stack or something like that a half an hour before, because you need to have the energy to make it happen. So, any questions on this part before we go on? Any thoughts that you guys have been having? Is there anything that you do in your day to be able to just get out and get your heart rate going? Christos likes burpees. So is that something that you do, burpees? Oh, you're at the air, by the airways at 23,000 feet. You're actually tying in from the air. That is so cool, man. I'm very cheap. Anybody who knows me, I'm like a value enthusiast. So I've never dropped the $6 to be, have Wi-Fi on an airplane, but good for you, Christos. Lori, walking outside. That's a good one. Environment is huge, particularly if you're in a clinical setting. The general feel of whether it be your EMS agency, your fire agency, or a hospital can be very intense because everything is always very important that everybody's doing. And so if you're looking to relieve anxiety by getting some action, sometimes it does help to just get out and get into a different environment. So big thing. Try and figure out a way to move every 30 to 60 minutes in your day. It does not have to be crazy, does not have to be big, but what it does have to do is get your heart rate up and break that monotony of sitting or that monotony of talking for too long. Let's go on to our next one now on this same thing. Back again to the idea of being a physical human being, somebody who does things. Something that is key to being a human is being balanced. And yet balance is extremely difficult. Just about everything in life takes balance. And the more complicated your life, the harder that balance can be. It's kind of the reason why when you first start out as a child, what's your first bike? It's normally a trike of some sort, some sort of 3-wheel. Why? The 3 wheels add balance. You go up a little bit harder and you get your first big person bike. And what does it have on the side? It has training wheels. Why? Because balance is difficult. You lose the training wheels, you go to a 2-wheel bike, a standard bike, works really well. If you keep on working on your balance, maybe you get to the point where you can ride a unicycle. Now, humanity is a lot like that balance. Everything is hard to balance, and the higher you get in your life, the more balance becomes important. Now, what's really interesting is physical balance relates very closely to personal balance. So if you're a person who's able to consciously balance physically, whether you have the ability to stand on one foot, you have the ability to do certain yoga poses. As we learn those things, regularly practicing physical balance helps to center us and creates balance in everything else in our life. So the first thing we want you to do this month is find ways to physically move. So get your heart rate up, run the stairs, that sort of thing. The second thing is to try and find ways to balance throughout your day. So maybe if you're standing, waiting in line, you start to feel the anxiety build, focus on just standing on one foot for a while. See how long you can stand on that foot and work on your balance. If you're having trouble with it, do a 90-10. 90% of your weight on one foot, 10% on the other. That focus on your physical balance will be able to affect your actual mental balance. Just noticed you put in a question here, Christos. Christos, I do the stairs at the hospital, made the commitment to always challenge myself with the stairs no matter what. Not only is it good to help thinking capacity, but builds confidence in commitments made. Awesome. That's a great one, Christos. That's making that commitment to challenge yourself on the stairs. It's one of those things you get into life and sometimes you forget those things. But I like the word commitment and doing it. Good on you, buddy. So the same thing with your balance is make the commitment to balance at regular intervals throughout the day. Now, what does that look like? Well, depending on your exact office situation, whether you're riding in an ambulance, whether you're waiting at the station, whether you're in an office place, you're going to have completely different environments at all times. So what you need to do is find a few key ways that you can do balances that aren't out of place. They're not going to make you look weird or a little bit strange in your office any more than normal. And find ways that you can put balance into your day. So the main thing is to go in, choose balance postures that you can do during your day, and then have them get progressively harder. As they get harder, it'll center you more and more as a person and as a human, besides all of the other benefits that it has to your central nervous system, to relaxing and everything else. So let's look at a couple of different ideas. So let's say you start out and you're trying to find moments to center yourself by balancing throughout the day. But starting out, let's assume that your balance is not that great. So the first thing you're going to do is find a way to stand one foot and do the 90-10. So you got all of your weight, about 90% of it on one leg and 10% on the other, just to keep it so your balance is good. Once you can do that at regular intervals without any issues, the next step is to try and close your eyes. You'll notice when the sensory of your eyes is taken away, balance becomes substantially more difficult, and it takes more concentration to center yourself. Once you can balance 90-10 on one foot with your eyes closed, go 90-10 with your eyes closed and your head up, and you'll find that it makes it even harder to be able to hold your balance because of the way the alignment works. After you have no trouble doing that, then you can switch up to just doing, so you're standing on one foot. Stand on one foot for a while, you start to get good at it. The same progression, close your eyes, be able to do it. You can see it obviously got harder right away, and then to be able to look up. The more you practice this throughout your day, the more centered you'll be, the more anxiety you'll relieve, and you'll find that even just 30 to 40 seconds at regular intervals of balancing throughout your day will relieve that stress. It'll help you think better, and it'll get you into the right state. Any questions on balance postures or what sort of things we could do that comes up in your head right away? Okay. Crystal. So I should look like a drunk flamingo. Exactly. That's the whole point. So Crystal says, should I look like a drunk flamingo? I know on the playbacks you don't get to see what people say. So that is exactly what you should be going for. And the funny thing is that over time, it ends up going faster and faster. So for me, my favorite balance, let's see if I can still do it, is I like to stand on one foot and then grab my toe. So the longer I do this, it's so funny. It takes about 15 seconds of doing that, and I'm totally in the moment because it's just enough that I have to really focus to be able to hold my balance. So the next thing we're going to look at quick, we've looked at the first thing for movement is get out, get your heart rate up, walk around, do some burpees, do the stairs. You should never go more than an hour and a half without getting your heart rate up. Every 30 minutes is ideal, but most people's rhythm, it starts to shut down their emotions in their brain if they go off more than an hour and a half without getting their heart rate up. So plan to move throughout your day. Second thing, plan to balance something in every 30 to 60 minutes. Some way of balancing to get yourself going. Now, the next one is something that we call the commitment gap. And I'm not sure if you can see that there. You see our little guy, and when he's sitting, trying to decide whether he's going to run and jump, his gas tank is completely empty. Once he starts moving toward jumping the gap, then his gas tank is full. So here's a funny thing. Our body is always trying to conserve energy. And one of the ways it conserves energy is not releasing it into our bloodstream until it believes we're actually going to do something. So if you get up at 5 a.m. and you say, today I go for a run, your body goes, no, you're not. Yeah, how I know you're not? You didn't go yesterday morning. If you say, I'm going to go to the gym, give me energy, body, your body's like, you're not going to the gym. I've been here all the time. You don't go to the gym. So every time you say you're going to do something, your body doesn't believe you. And it doesn't release the energy to do something until after you've started moving. How long does this take? Well, for every person, it's a little bit different. But most people, it's between 1.5 minutes and 5 minutes is how long their commitment gap is. So that's how long from the time they decide to do something to the time when their body releases the energy to do that action. So from the moment you commit yourself and you say, okay, that stack of paperwork that's been building up, the dishes, the going to the gym, from the moment you say, okay, I've got this, I'm going to nail that paperwork, or you say, I've got this, I'm going to the gym, from the moment you commit, it's going to be about 1.5 minutes to 5 minutes of feeling like absolute garbage. And then all of a sudden, you'll feel a little tingle in your spine and your body's released the energy and you'll start feeling good about doing it. So what we want you to do to practice this is every time you're thinking about doing something you don't want to do, could be anything in your life, paperwork, calling somebody, answering an email, set your timer. Say, I'm going to do this. Set your timer and start doing it. Notice how long it takes for your body to release the energy. Do you feel that tingle in your spine and you start to feel good about action? What it'll start to do is you'll notice it's very consistent. So whether it be going to the gym, doing paperwork, anything in your life, you'll find out that for you, there's sometime between 1.5 minutes and 5 minutes that it consistently takes to start feeling energized as you're taking action. Now, this does a few things for you. First off, you know how long you have to suffer through not feeling good for things to start happening, which is a big deal, right? So you're sitting on the couch, you worked all day, you know you should get some exercise, you know you're anxious. You think, oh, I'm going to feel like garbage all night. But once you know that your commitment gap between the time you decide to do something and the time you act is only 3 minutes before you feel good, you're like, you know what? I got 3 minutes in me and I can do this. What our brain tends to think is that if I'm sitting on the couch and I feel terrible about myself and my life, and I go for a walk, I'm going to be spending energy walking and I'm going to feel terrible about myself and my life. We don't realize that the second you get moving, our chemical structure changes. We start feeling good about ourselves. We start getting energy and everything starts to improve. So what you've got to do is be able to survive that first 1.5 to 5 minutes, that commitment gap from the time you decide to take action to the time you start feeling good. Time that, and then you know this is how long it's going to take for me to feel great. And for the most part, there's almost all of us have the self-control to put up with feeling like garbage for 2 minutes waiting for the anxiety to go away, and waiting for the new energy from exercise to take over. So I'm just going to run through these one more time from the top, and then any questions you have, we can go over them then. So the first one, find ways to move every day. Ideally, every 30 minutes, you should get your heart rate up doing something, but try to never go more than an hour and a half without getting your heart rate up. If every hour and a half you get your heart rate up in some way, your body will naturally calm you down, your anxiety will go away, and you'll feel better about yourself. 2, same thing. Every 30 minutes to hour and a half, find some way to balance. The moment you balance, you center yourself, you stop worrying about the past, you stop worrying about the future, you get fully engaged in the moment, and you start feeling better about yourself, and your whole system starts to find its balance. Find a way to balance that works for you, sometime every hour to hour and a half. And the third one, know that when you're having trouble moving, you're having trouble finding ways to balance, you're having trouble getting yourself going, that is not going to last forever. Your commitment gap for most people, again, it's only a minute and a half to 5 minutes. Every time you're having trouble getting going, you know you need to move, you know you need to balance, you know you need to exercise, set your timer and get going. And notice, how long does it take for you to start feeling good? Once you know consistently that it's only 3 minutes, it's only 4 minutes, it's only 2 minutes, till you start feeling good, you can mentally have the self-control to overcome that. When your brain's trying to figure out if it has the self-control to work out for an hour, it's always going to say no. When your self-control is just to get yourself over that first couple of minutes, it becomes totally possible. So, 1, design ways that you can move that fit to your environment and fit your personal fitness level. Find ways to balance that won't make you look too weird in your work environment, but get yourself centered. And 3rd, time how long it takes for the commitment gap to end. Time how long it takes you to start feeling good once you get moving. So, any questions on those? You can ask on all 3 of them. We've got about 7 minutes left here on the video, so let me know what you're thinking. What are some obstacles that you might come up with, and some ideas that you might have for moving, balancing, or timing your commitment gap? Nothing. Feel free to fire me an email as well if you have any thoughts on this, because it's actually, for the most part, for this lesson, it's fairly simple. It's find a way to move, find a way to balance, and know that it's going to happen. Lori, what if you're in a flow state and don't realize you haven't moved? It's valid. Very seldom do you accidentally get in a flow state. For the most part, generally when people think they're in a flow state and they're losing time, it's actually because they're on autopilot and daydreaming. Not all the time. There are times where you're just absolutely kicking butt, getting everything done, and tasks are rolling off and you're operating brilliantly. But those are really few and far between. If you're actually in a true flow state and you're just in a genius state, getting stuff done, keep going and ride the wave out. But for the most part, when people are missing time in their day, it's just because they were daydreaming and they completely turned their brain off. So the way to decide whether you're in a flow state or autopilot is on the outcomes of the work you're producing. If you're in a flow state, everything's going to be brilliant. And then on the other side of things, if you're daydreaming, there's no output. So if you're in a flow state and you're just getting amazing amounts of work done and tasks are falling, your work is brilliant, don't interrupt it, But on the other hand, if you look back at what you did in the last hour and it's a bunch of gobbledygook or 2 sentences, get up and move. So Lori said, oh, totally. I can see where I'm a daydreamer. Thanks, that makes sense. So here's an example. Lori and I were just in California working to teach a number of hospitals staff these sorts of techniques. And we'd be driving around, and it was at the end of the day, we were tired, and we did laps around a block like 5 times because neither of us could see an open parking spot. Our brains totally turned off. That was a daydreamer state, not a flow state. Well, I think that just about wraps it up for this week. I'm going to send out a couple of videos over the next few weeks, and each one of them is going to focus on a specific aspect of this. Ideas for exercise, ideas for balance, and ideas for how to get over the commitment gap. So thank you so much for tuning in. You have yourselves a great week. Now I'm going to look down awkwardly as I try and end this.